Hello and welcome to week 4 of Paula's Run Club Road to London with me, Paula Radcliffe.
Me, Christopher Thompson.
And we have got a jam-packed episode coming up for you this week. We will be catching up with strength and conditioning expert Rich Blagrove for his tips on how to build some extra strength and conditioning into your week. And on our road to London, of our special guests that we're following, we'll be catching up with Judd and his training partner Gab Stone, who are currently, hopefully, smashing the training session that Coach Thommo has set for them this week.
I have every confidence.
So we are week 4 now, Thommo, on our road to London. I just want to give a quick shout out at the top of the programme to everybody who's been listening. We have had lots of new listeners joining us on this 16-week road to London. So thank you. We hope you're getting something that you find useful and helpful. And I'm sure that this week, with Rich Blagrove coming up to give us lots of strength and conditioning advice, will really help out. What have you been up to this week, Thommo?
Ricky, what have I been up? You know what? And it's funny we mentioned
think,
this.
didn't you?
Well, I did have to think because you like to be genuine, don't you, with it? But I actually last week did tweak my calf, which is apt now. We've got Rich coming on, so I did I jumped in with Verity before she went away on a athlete I work with, and I did some 200s on the track. Mm-hmm. And again, it's this. It always comes down to we all make these mistakes. I've got the engine, but I didn't do a good enough warm up. I didn't look after myself. I'm like, my brain's elsewhere with family and other commitments. And then the day after having done that, my calf really tightened up. And then I went out for a run, I think a day later, and it's really sore. So I've had to ice it. And again, it's that reminder that I need to, do the conditioning work just to remind. And he actually talks a bit about calf. So when you ask me what do you do, I suddenly in my head think, well, hang on, I treat my calf. I need to do some more calf raises. What about you? What have you been up to?
I'm slightly jet lagged at the moment because I'm just coming back. I went out to Bermuda, first time in Bermuda. And
I'm glad you didn't get lost and you're back. Well done.
My son did say that. He was like, Mum, do you have to go to this one? I'm really worried. But I actually found out something really interesting about that. So the Bermuda Triangle, I always sort of thought it was like a myth and it was some bit in the middle of the sea around Bermuda or something. But it's not. It goes from Bermuda. So Bermuda's at the top of the triangle. And then you go San Juan in Puerto Rico and Miami. And that is the triangle. So it's a big triangle. But when they said that, when I was out there, I was taking part in the Bermuda Triangle Challenge. So it was the Chubb Bermuda Triangle Challenge, which was basically a mile on the Friday night, 10K on the Saturday, and then either half for the half challenge or a full marathon on the Sunday. And the plus side, there's bits of trail in that full marathon. So I actually can think about going to do it. So I did the 10K as well as all the ambassador. So I've got my bit of the medal there, but it makes a 4-piece medal. Well, it's got magnets on the back. It's really clever design, and so it makes a 4-stack. So you have your mile at the back, and then you have your 10K, and then you have your half or your full, and then you have the full challenge, and it kind of completes up a little picture of Bermuda. So I said, I've started my own triangle now because I've now done a 10K in Bermuda and a 10K in San Juan. And I've kind of done a 10K in Orlando, but they said that wasn't close enough to Miami. So I've got to find one in Miami to make my own triangle.
Oh, blimey.
The challenge thrown down.
I was going to say challenge thrown down. So hang on, that medal, does it form a pyramid then? Type? Does it shrink with the size of the...
No, it's the bit in the middle that builds the picture. So I don't know if you can see, if I hold it close enough. See, I've got a boat on the sea.
Okay, so it's a triangle with...
Yeah, I guess the one at the back had something up here.
I see, in that small...
And they kind of keep adding things on.
You're making people listening want to go on YouTube.
As they move forward. I know, check it out. So it's really, really friendly, a lot of fun. And to Richard's point that's going to come up later on with the strength and conditioning and things, I got back to running a 10K in my Zoomfly 6, which are the shoes that got me injured in Boston in terms of I just didn't quite have the calf strength to be able to run at that pace in Boston. It was nothing to do with the shoes. But I've been babying my calf up to this point, and I actually managed to get out there and run around it. And here's the fun bit of it is there's rum stops. So there are actual Bermuda, because I didn't realise the dark and stormy comes from Bermuda.
So just to clarify, you said rum, not run.
Rum, yes, rum in the
Rum.
races. And blew me away. So it's 13 miles and 20 miles in the marathon. And so I thought going on that proportion, there might be one with like a mile to go in the 10K. So I could probably do that one, given I was just kind of running around chatting. But no, it was at 3 miles, so I missed it.
What,
So I
deliberately,
have
or
to
you
go.
just didn't see it?
No, I accidentally missed it. I didn't think there would be at
Hang on.
3 miles.
So a rum stop at 3 miles into a half marathon, or in a
So the
10K.
emphasis
So
is
you
definitely on
did a
fun,
10K.
but some of them were running really quickly as well. So yeah, I think it's a really really cool way to mix it up. So anybody looking for a little bit of a sunshine break, I wouldn't say it was really warm out there, but certainly warmer than it was in the UK, and a really great way to kind of get some company. So indeed, the guy who was second in the marathon was using it as a training run, a long run training run for the Tokyo Marathon that he's building up towards. So a fun way to do that and get a bit of warm weather and company on your runs.
I just thought, is the Bermuda shorts come from Bermuda?
Yes. So yeah, I was chatting to a couple, and you know how Scottish people would get married in a kilt,
Yeah.
or they get married in the shorts. And there were people that ran with their Bermuda shorts on, and there was a lot of fun, fancy dress in there as well. So yeah, a
Wow.
really, really fun event. I would massively recommend it. And Bermudan hospitality is top notch.
Do you know what? Genuinely, my parents, when I was a kid, and we're saying I was about 5, 6, 7. Actually, I say that to protect myself. I was probably a teenager, but I refused to wear jeans. I only wanted to wear Bermuda shorts. So all my pictures when I was a kid, even if it was like winter, I had these purple Bermuda shorts, and I just for some reason in my head thought it was the best thing to wear. And my parents were like, "Do you not want to wear some jeans?" I was like, "No, I want to wear Bermuda shorts because I." And my rationale was I would look cooler than jeans.
Okay.
And I'm not saying
There
that's
you go.
wrong now, as retrospectively. I'm just saying I was obsessed with them when I was young, and so there you go. I need to go there and stock up.
So yeah, a quick shout out to I know we're going to have her hopefully on the podcast in the future, Natasha Harvey, who is from North Shields Poly Club, and she went out there for the first time and she ended up winning the full challenge. So I'm not exactly sure where she placed in the mile and the 10K, but she won the marathon in 3:26. Huge shout out, given how hilly it is. It is hilly. It's not somewhere you go for quick times. And I think her PB is just outside of 3 hours. So that was a good shout. So she's going to come on and talk to us a bit more about that. And now I think it's about time we get into the chat with Rich. So Rich Blagrove coming up. Now, as we have promised a lot of times, we have found you an expert on strength and conditioning. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce well, it's not even a Loughborough alumni, because you're still at Loughborough, aren't you, Rich? But introduce Rich Blagrove, who is a senior lecturer in physiology at Loughborough University, but more importantly, a strength and conditioning coach and a runner too. So here to help give us advice, Rich, please, on why runners and marathon runners in particular on our road to London need to make sure that we have that S&C background and we put some weight training into our weekly training.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation to come on, Paula and Tom. I really appreciate it.
So what kind of exercises do you think we should put in as basics? Let's say in a marathon build up, a lot of people are trying to kind of fit in their training around their work, around their family commitments, building towards a marathon in April. Realistically, if they can get in a couple of strength sessions a week, it's going to make a big benefit, isn't it? Come race day itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think a lot of distance runners often find it strange that lifting weights and doing strength training is going to help their running performance just because it is so different and it kind of sits at the opposite end of kind of a specificity continuum, if you like. But I guess there's three main reasons why a runner would engage with strength training. The first one is that we know that it improves their performance. The second thing is it reduces the risk of a runner getting injured. And there's also a lot of other wider kind of health benefits associated with strength training and lifting weights, which become particularly important as we get older. So yeah, those are the three main reasons why most runners should be lifting some weights and doing some strength training.
So what does like, and again, I'm conscious that for a lot of people going into a gym it can be quite daunting, especially for me these days, because everyone just looks so competent with what they're doing. You sort of go in and everyone's in their zone, and it's like they're lifting, and they generally it feels like a lot of people acting like they know what they're doing. But if you're new to going into the gym and where to start, what would be kind of, what does a strength and conditioning routine kind of for a basic beginner look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess probably the best thing for most people to do, if they can afford it, is to try to find a qualified coach. So if you can work alongside a qualified strength and conditioning coach, or maybe a personal trainer that's got some background in working with athletes, that's probably the best thing to do, because it's safe and it'll be a little bit more effective because they can kind of set you an individualized program. If people can't do that, or they don't have access to a qualified coach, there are plenty of exercises that are going to be safe and effective for them to do. So as Paula mentioned before, like, most runners should be engaging with strength and conditioning work a couple of times a week, ideally, for about 45 minutes to an hour-ish. And that might include something between about 6 and 12 sets of exercise for some of the lower limb muscles. So that's going to include some basic movement skills, such as the squat, such as hip hinging exercises like a deadlift, stepping exercises, some sort of lunging type pattern, as well as some work for the upper body and the trunk as well, or kind of core stability. And so for an absolute novice, that might just be working with body weight, where we're trying to sort of master movement skills and just trying to develop a bit of movement competency. And then for people, runners that have been engaged with strength training for quite a long time, you can be obviously lifting like a fairly decent amount of weights to try and get the overload that's appropriate.
And just quickly on that, Rich, because we will have younger listeners as well. What is your advised kind of cutoff for transitioning? So you mentioned lifting with body weight. For example,
Yeah,
my son's 15, and
yeah,
at the moment I kind of allow him to do kind of weighted backpack or some
yeah,
kind of
sure.
weight calf raises, single leg for those ones. But the rest of it, we're trying to work with body weight or kind of
Yeah.
dumbbells, because I think heavy weights when you're still growing are a little bit of a no-no, aren't they?
Certainly, and like, I think with anybody that's just starting out with strength training for the first time, whether it's a young runner, an adult runner, or an older runner, like, it is important just to sort of develop good movement technique initially. And so usually I would prescribe, a body weight squat, a body weight hip hinge, such as a glute bridge on the ground, or what we call a Romanian deadlift exercise, a kind of step down or a sort of step up type exercise, a split squat, something like a press up, and an inverted row, which is sort of working the pulling muscles. And initially, just with body weight across all of those exercises, just work on sort of developing sound technique. And then in the sort of 2 days after you've done those exercises for the first time, if you're not kind of feeling too sore and it's not impacting your running training, then it's probably safe to start adding just small amounts of weight. And so that weight could be in the form of, like you say, a weighted backpack. It could be in the form of some light dumbbells. It could be a kettlebell. It could be some kind of elastic resistance that you can just buy cheaply online. And that provides the body with a little bit more overload to keep progressing in terms of strength improvement.
What else? I was going to ask about TRX. What about something like a TRX? I know I used to travel with that. Did once end up almost sitting in a cactus because my husband came back sooner than expected and opened the door, which the TRX was pinned to. But those sort of things that you can travel with might be helpful for people to be able to fit them in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think if we go back sort of 10 or so years ago now, we spoke about strength training, like it was either kind of barbells and dumbbells, or these free weights, or it was resistance machines. But in this day and age, we've got a multitude of different types of equipment and ways that we can load the body. So I mentioned before, we've gone through a phase where kettlebells have been quite fashionable. We've got these sort of big, sort of monster elastic bands that I mentioned before. And so you can use all of those in appropriate ways to get overload and start challenging yourself when it comes to strength training.
I mean, one of the things that when I go into a gym that goes through my head is running is quite a one-dimensional thing for our body to do.
Yeah,
and
sure.
it's that repetitive nature of repeated movement that can actually, as much as you can build efficiency through it, it can also increase injury risk through the repetitiveness of that impact through one dimension through the body. And I've always kind of seen gym as an opportunity to mix that up, kind of create the chaos around the body to create, ironically, create more stability when you run. Because so I guess, would you say, based on all the equipment, it's as much about mixing up the movement pattern within the gym, and like you say, starting with body and starting with good technique, rather than worrying too much about necessarily being too repetitive in the gym with the same exercises, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I exactly get what you mean. Absolutely, and I think the danger is with any sorts of athletes that are preparing for a specific sport. If you go into the gym environment and you try to kind of mimic and simulate what's going on in the sport, like firstly, it becomes unsafe quite quickly, but it's actually not really that effective. And I think if, yeah, a runner wants to get better at running, they obviously need to spend a lot of time running. And so the reason that we go to the gym is to load the body in a safe and effective way to try to improve just lower limb strength generally. And then specifically on your point about injury, try to provide some specific overload to the tissues that are vulnerable to injury, because we know that's the most effective way to improve things like tendon resilience, to improve bone mineral density and bone health, as well as strengthen some of the specific muscles that might get overused with running. And so we sort of need to use the tools and the exercises that we've got in the gym environment in the right sort of way, rather than just trying to like do another running session, if you like.
And so that brings me on to thinking about specificity of things as carbon shoes and stuff like that have come in. So one of the main reasons that marathon runners kind of do the gym work is to build up the main large muscle areas to actually store your glycogen in. But have you seen, as the carbon shoes are more and more widely used, that there is an increase in the need for strengthening particularly lower limbs like feet and calves?
Yes, it's a really, really good question, Paula, and I think it's probably the main question that I've had from coaches over the last 5 years since this advanced footwear technology has kind of become commonplace in the running community. And I think from a sort of researcher's perspective, like we don't really know the answers to that. There isn't very much data that sort of shows this is the best combination of exercises to use to get the most out of the shoes or to prevent injury. But I think a bit more with my coach's hat on, there's probably three main considerations here. The first one is we know that the shoes kind of shift the stress at the foot a little bit, and it tends to place a bit more stress on a bone called the navicular bone. And
I know all about that one.
yeah, it reduces the work at the calf because
Right.
essentially the carbon fiber plate alongside the foam is doing a lot of the work that the calf would be doing if you weren't wearing the shoes. And so it probably does necessitate a little bit more barefoot conditioning. And I mean, barefoot conditioning is something we haven't spoken about yet, but it's an area of strength and conditioning that I get most of my runners to do. So they'll do some simple hopping and jumping exercises without shoes on. They'll do things like toe scrunches. They'll do balancing exercises where they're reaching with their free leg, just to try to improve some of the proprioception and stability around their foot and ankle, which might offset the risk of any kind of injuries that you might develop as a result of wearing some of these super shoes. Secondly, we also know that a lot of the work that's sort of moved from the ankle is shifted up the chain. So you end up kind of loading around the hip a little bit more. So there's probably a bit of necessity to make sure you've got some decent hip strengthening within your strength and conditioning program. And the final thing is because of the sort of higher stack heights that we see in a lot of these super shoes now, and I've nearly twisted my ankle a few times. You probably do need a little bit more kind of stability around the ankle, particularly when you wear them for the first time, and if you're on any sort of uneven ground. And so, yeah, it's sort of addressing those three main areas to either get the most out of the shoes in terms of performance or reduce the risk of picking up any injuries. That's
See,
super
that's
important.
interesting. So the calf exercises that we keep saying you need to do more calf exercises are actually because the calf is doing less work in the shoes. So you need to keep the strength there because they're not being trained by the running.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think if runners literally just put the shoes on to race in, they're obviously not going to
Yeah.
start to lose strength at the calf. But we're seeing a lot of runners now that are wearing them for their interval sessions, they're wearing them for the tempos, they're wearing them for the long runs. And so that adds up to quite a high proportion of kind of weekly running volume. And so, yeah, the deconditioning that might start going on at some of the joints and the tissues that would be otherwise be loading might be quite large.
And just to clarify before I let Tom, sorry, I know you want to ask a question, Tom. Just on the foot
It's like this every week,
exercises.
Rich. Every week.
No, I just want to make sure people, because you can do the foot exercises daily, can't you? If it's scrunching a toe or stand balancing on one leg, brushing your teeth, it is something that you don't have to go to the gym to do. You can be doing those all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly if you're picking some of those more low level exercises, those are things that runners can incorporate into their warm ups just to kind of activate the muscles around there. And then if they kind of microdose a little bit of foot conditioning almost every day of the week in that way, it does kind of accumulate to some meaningful benefit and adaptation.
Right, go, Tomo.
No, that was just going to feed. No, it's all good. But it's like when we have guests on, we're both so desperate just to pick their brains forensically. So we're both on tenterhooks for questions, so that's fine. I was going to say, Rich, so like obviously that as you just mentioned, feet, you can kind of activate and do that a lot, almost touch point every day. But with like the calf and the glute, which are slightly where they're kind of, the size of the muscle matters, and the way in which you strengthen it, I would say matters. And so in terms of how best to view kind of calf strength per se, I kind of in my head I'm trying to work out how to ask this question in terms of, you're trying to do high rep, low recovery, or lower rep, bigger recovery. And so in terms of what's best to kind of get the calf condition to the shoe and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think runners can use both approaches depending on really what fits best with their overall training program and just lifestyle in general. And so mentioned before that I guess sort of what we know from research and sort of the default approach to strengthening a muscle is, well, if you expose it a couple of times a week to some overload, and you do that through several different types of exercises, that would sort of constitute a kind of strength training session. But a lot of the time, particularly with some of the runners that I've worked with over the years, it doesn't kind of fit with their training program and their lifestyle, particularly if they're working full time and they've got families and they're not willing to travel to a gym and buy a gym membership. And it's like, well, actually, I can kind of fit in a small amount of strength and conditioning every day of the week. So instead, I'm going to kind of split those 2 sessions across 6 different sessions. And 4 times a week, I'm going to do some calf strengthening exercises. And that might just be 3 or 4 sets of work, but it's kind of like a decent stimulus every day. And again, it sort of accumulates over the course of the week into something that's going to promote a meaningful adaptation. So you kind of end up like microdosing the strength and conditioning across the week, and it makes it a little bit more manageable for some runners in terms of fitting into their lifestyle.
But if you're doing that, you would recommend less weight or even potentially just body weight because you're doing more frequently than heavier stuff?
I would still tend to try to load it quite heavy if we can.
Okay.
I think for most runners that are just starting out strength and conditioning, even doing double-footed calf raises is usually going to provide enough overload, and you get sort of 10, 12 repetitions, and you can feel like a real burn in the calf muscles. And then you might progress to doing 2 feet up, 1 foot down, and then eventually just 1 foot at a time. And if you keep those quite controlled, like even quite well trained and runners that are performing at a high level will only be able to do sort of 12 to 15 repetitions of that. And then potentially you can start adding some load in the form of holding a weight or a backpack or something. And I've got exercises where I kind of tether belts together and then do a sort of calf press sitting on a chair. So we're sort of loading the muscle in what we call an isometric or a static position. And that provides some really nice overload to some of the muscles around the ankle.
Great. What do you do, Tomo? Calf-wise?
Well,
I'm just thinking while we're here, we may as well get the expert to check it over.
No.
I mean, because I've used a Smith rack.
Yes.
Because it helps with calf raises, and a step. So I would do 3 sets of 10 each side, straight leg, 3 sets of 10 bent leg. So I'm actually doing 60 reps each side, but with I guess there'd probably be about 30k because the bar's less, isn't there, on there? Be about 30k on there.
Yeah, that sounds decent, Paula. Really good. That's not untypical for one what a lot of the runners that I work with would be doing. And I mean, the Smith machine's good for calf raises in particular because it adds quite a lot of stability. And I
Yeah,
mean, everybody can relate to the fact that if you stand on one leg and then you roll
you're a
up
bit wobbly.
onto the ball of your foot, you're very, very wobbly. So if you're going to try and add any sort of load, like you need to sort of be holding something lightly, or you need some stability. So if you put a bar across your back, it's a little bit safer to be in a Smith machine.
Just to quantify to the listener that a Smith machine is where it looks like a squat rack, but it's a squat rack with bars, so it holds, so you don't rock back and forward. So
it's on a runner
it's on
essentially.
a runner
Yeah.
pushing you up and down, rather than a free weight that just kind of you have to balance with it. A Smith machine kind of does the balance for you, so you can put absolute strength through. But one of the things I did, because I think you kind of touched upon it around access to gyms and availability, that not everyone lives either A, close, or B, can necessarily get into a gym. But when I had an Achilles problem long time ago, and even when it's your full-time job as a runner, you do make a point of going to the gym. But I was trying to because of the Achilles issue I needed to do the exercises more frequently, and it felt to me like making the effort to go to the gym like 5 times a week when I was doing 2 big sessions, and the other times I needed to do it, I thought there must be a better way of doing this, more time efficient, better way of doing it, especially because one of the things I like to do, especially when I had Achilles issue, is do an exercise and just get into bed, because it's quite sore afterwards. And so I
Yeah.
came up with I thought, right, if I do some calf raises at home, how can I make this harder? And I couldn't find anything in the house heavy enough, so I just got Gemma on my back. So every night I had Gemma.
I was going to ask about Theo, but I didn't imagine
No,
you'd
this
do
is
it
a
with
long
Gemma on your
time.
back.
This is when I was a pro athlete, way back in 2011, I think it was. So I had Gemma on. It was the most romantic time of our lives, where she was on my back and I'm doing calf raises.
At least you
But
didn't drop her.
well, yeah, well, I didn't have her upside down. It was like a piggyback. But I did that, and I'd literally do my calf raises, and that with that particular Achilles issue, I didn't go below floor level. So when you mentioned about coming down, so I was going 2 leg up, 1 leg down, but I wasn't going below the floor to overstretch it, because it was more of an insertional issue. And then I'd get straight into bed because I'd be hobbling. So it'd be like, I can't remember the numbers I was doing, but it is like that, because again, like, I'm not saying what Gemma's weight was, but it just, that extra bit of weight kind of helped kind of create the extra stimulus I needed through my calf. So yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you should get on people's back, Rich, in the gym.
It's like a
Absolutely.
very imaginative way to load. But,
Well, presumably it adds a little bit of extra core twist because a person can move. So it's not like because if you do squats on the Smith rack, I guess you're reducing the amount of core kind of bonus stuff, if you like, that you're getting in. Are you? Because with a free
Yeah.
weights, you'd move slightly more, so your core needs to work a little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, with the Smith machine, probably I'm trying to think. Probably the only exercise that I ever really use that machine is with calf raises. So typically with things, yeah, the more sort of big multi-joint compound lifts, like your squats, like your deadlifts, like your Romanian deadlifts and your step ups, we would usually load the athlete with a barbell. Partly because it works kind of trunk and sort of core stability a little bit more, but also because the path of a barbell isn't completely vertical when we're doing those exercises, so it kind of has to move in a few different planes for the exercise to be safe, and so it would be better with free weights on those
Yeah.
exercises.
One question I did want to ask is regard to the age-old debate, and I don't know what you used to do, Thommo. Do you run before or after your strength and conditioning?
Good question.
Yeah, no, that is a really good question, and I think my slight cop out answer is
You're going to sit
as
on the
long
fence.
as it's done. Like if you compare just not doing strength and conditioning to just having it somewhere, whether it's just before a run, just after a run, the same day as a session, after a session, like you're still going to be better off just doing something rather than nothing. So I'd always say, as long as people sort of fit it into where it kind of suits them best within the training week. I guess my more sort of slightly scientific answer is we would usually try to put it on a day where there's an easy run alongside it, or there's nothing else going on. So you've got a sort of rest day from running, if you like, but I can fit a strength and conditioning session on that day. And that usually means that there's at least 24 hours before you're going to do any sort of hard running, like intervals or a tempo run, for example. There is a scenario where, like, more well-trained and elite runners that I work with, some of them will have their strength and conditioning on the same day as a session, which sounds a little bit controversial and quite a high injury risk. But the rationale for that is you essentially put all the sort of hard physical work, whether that's kind of your cardio-metabolic work from running or your neuromuscular work from strength training, you put all the hard stuff essentially on one day. And it seems to work quite well for those that are well trained. As I say, they can recover very, very quickly within the space of a few hours, as long as they're fueling well. But it's
So they would do it after the session or
so
before?
they usually have a few hours after their session. They'll go home, have something to eat, and they'll come back and do their strength work in the afternoon. I think it works fine if you're just doing sort of heavy resistance training. But if there's an element of plyometric training, which is you jumping, you're hopping, you're bounding, skipping type exercises, it's a little bit of a red flag for me. Because if you've covered sort of, I don't know, 6 to 10 miles in an interval running session, then you're exposing particularly the Achilles again to some quite heavy stress in the form of plyometrics. It is quite a big risk, that. So as long as you're doing kind of resistance training, it's for the more well-trained runners, they can get away with that.
It reminds me, I've told you my story, haven't I, Thommo, of so when I was training for my first marathon, Rich, I was out in Albuquerque, and my training plan was set by Max Jones, who was actually the UK head coach at the time, but was a throws coach and a strength and conditioning coach. And so I remember calling him and saying, I don't know what's gone on, but my workout today, my weights workout really didn't pan out. My squats were okay. My cleans were absolutely rubbish. I just couldn't go anywhere near the normal weights that I would be lifting. So he went, well, walk me through what you've done today. I said, well, this morning I did a 2 hours 15 long run. And then I came to the gym this afternoon. He's like, stop there. That's probably why. And it was exactly as you've just said. The squats were fine, but the cleans, there was no explosive energy left in my body to be able to get near where I should have been able to with the cleans.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. It's the most sort of sensitive physical quality to any kind of fatigue is anything that is very kind of explosive. So if we're trying to get off the ground quickly, like in a jumping exercise or with power cleans where we're trying to develop a lot of power, those exercises will be really sensitive to any sort of fatigue that you've added earlier in the day in the form of either a long run or a session. And so, either separating them out with a longer recovery, so probably 6 to 8 hours, or ideally doing it on a different day, where you can get at least 24 hours recovery would make a bit more sense with those exercises.
So because you've led me to the question I was going to ask around the long run. I think for a lot of people getting ready for any marathon, and obviously we're talking about London, is by and large, I think a lot of people, just through the way the weeks pan out, try on a weekend to do their longer run of the week. So would you suggest having a gym program kind of in the 2 days possibly after the run, or in the 2-3 days before, or maybe in the middle, like a Wednesday if you're doing a long run on the Sunday? I think that's the middle, in that ballpark. Where would you suggest putting it?
What you're kind of illustrating there is just how busy runners' weeks get really, really quickly. I think a lot will do their long run on a Sunday morning, for example. You get a lot of runners trying to do a session, so an interval training session on a Tuesday. They'll then maybe have a tempo run on either a Thursday or a Friday, and it's sort of like, well, where are we going to fit some strength work in there? I think with that kind of organisation that I just described, like I would usually try to put like a main lifting session on a Monday, and that usually gives sort of 24 hours after the long run, but another 24 hours before the interval training session. And then similarly, if we're going to do a sort of traditional organisation and have a second strength training bout somewhere in there, have that towards the end of the week, so either on a Thursday or a Friday, but try to keep it sort of away from any kind of tempo type running, perhaps.
So how would you, in a marathon build-up, would you kind of reduce the time and weight in the gym rather than necessarily the frequency of going to the gym as you get closer to a marathon day? How would you approach kind of going through? Because people are getting to about 12 weeks out, so they can have a fairly full week at this stage and they're still building up. But as the long runs and the running gets more demanding, how would you, and as you guys have both told the story about your power kind of diminishes as you do more of those long runs, would you kind of move away from the injury risks of overdoing it and more make it conditioning, or how would you see that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I would always, usually with the strength and conditioning work, I kind of use it as a bit of a kind of prerequisite, or sort of preempts the stress that's kind of about to come. So like I've runners that maybe go away on training camps at an elite level, and we talk about the type of terrain and that they're going to be exposed to there. And so the S&C sort of reflects the types of joints and tissues that are going to be under stress there. So try to reduce down the injury risk by exposing them to that via the S&C. And it's similar with the scenario that you just painted with the marathon running, that I think as volume starts to increase, and particularly as the long run starts to go up, like you might really, really struggle the next day to get in the gym and do the sort of work that you were maybe doing 4 to 6 weeks before. And so I think in the early part of a marathon build, if you can try to sort of prioritize the strength and conditioning for maybe a 4 to 6 week period, and then we know quite well from the research that if we reduce the volume down to as much as 50%, you can still maintain the qualities that you've built up in that 4 to 6 week period. So runners don't have to necessarily worry about losing all of the adaptations and the gains that they've made during that early part if they can sort of keep something going in the background, with either one meaningful session a week or 2 reduced volume sessions a week.
And what about then as you get close to marathon itself, to race day? I mean, we talk a lot about the taper down in terms of training. I personally used to stop lifting in the 2 weeks before the race, but I would carry on with some core workouts. So I'd have core workouts and medicine ball in there, calf raises still in there. But the rest of it, the heavy lifting, I would stop. Is that okay? I mean, you're not going to lose that muscle mass as you've talked about in that taper down to the race, are you?
No. And I think when it gets that close, like usually I'm working really closely with the runner's technical coach, and it's sort of, as you're sort of suggesting, it kind of comes down to personal preference a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you've done some preparatory races and it's like, well, actually, I didn't really do any strength and conditioning the week before and I ran really well, then probably stick to that sort of taper. If I have freedom around prescription, what I usually try to do is follow the same sorts of principles as the running. So I'll usually encourage runners to maintain the frequency of their strength and conditioning, even right up until sort of 3 to 4 days before the event, but reduce the volume down to about 50% of what they're used to, and just sort of keep the key exercises in that are allowing them to prevent injury primarily. So you're just kind of keeping a little top up there really in the program, and just trying to stay in routine rather than just completely rest.
I'm conscious that we've got the thumbs up for the time, but there's two things I want to ask quickly. One was I have the importance of strength and conditioning as you get older. I feel like becomes more and more important for longevity. Obviously when you're younger it's about performance, and there's a lot of natural kind of, I guess, testosterone and things that you can kind of gain through, but as I've gotten older the more it's had a bigger part to play. And I guess I just wanted to ask, like, A, would you agree, and B, why?
Yeah, I do absolutely agree. And sadly for all of us, after we reach about age 35, we know that our kind of bones and muscles and other soft tissues, they start to degenerate. So running or whatever sort of exercise we're doing obviously provides a really important health stimulus, particularly to the cardiovascular system. But we're still going to kind of lose muscle mass. We're still going to lose tendon resilience, as well as some bone mass. And so those types of tissues and structures in the body, they need a different type of stimulus beyond just simply low intensity running. And so that's where strength training comes into it. So just for kind of general health and maintaining muscle mass and the quality of some of those tissues does become really important, particularly beyond the age of sort of 50 years old, and when a lot of our hormones start to decrease quite rapidly, which are responsible for maintaining some of those tissues.
So to close, I think it would be nice for if, like, I mean, you're
I was
you
going to
have a
close on a
book.
fun one, Thommo.
No,
Oh yeah,
you
we'll
can do it.
first give we'll give the
No,
mention of
because
the book. Absolutely. Sorry, go
no.
ahead,
Well, the
Rich.
thing is, we haven't talked specific exercise, and I think for you
Yeah.
your book would be a good way to kind of for people to go away and have a look at some of the specific exercises you're talking about from this podcast, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Tomo. Yeah, yeah. So I've got the book Strength and Conditioning for Endurance Running, which I kind of wrote as it's more of a sort of self-help guide. So you won't find in there like this is the best program to use in the gym for a runner. It's got a sort of library of different exercises that runners can use, from those that are just starting out, and so some of the really basic ones that we've mentioned on this podcast, to exercises that I guess are a little bit more complex, a little bit more intense for those that have been doing it for a few years, as well as specific exercises that target areas that are vulnerable to injury or runners have had injuries in the past. So hopefully it's a really useful resource for runners in that regard.
And just to recap from the beginning, you said that the main standard exercises that you would put in for endurance running kind of are your squats, your hip hinge exercises, your calves exercises, and lunge, some type of lunge. Would that be the main four, say?
Yeah, I guess there's sort of seven, we sometimes call them like pillars of movement in strength and conditioning, and they're not a bad place for any sort of athlete to start. That includes runners, and then we can kind of individualize off the back of that, depending upon where weaknesses and injury history lies. But yeah, to recap those, so we've got squatting based movement patterns, we've got hip hinging, which are things like glute bridges and Romanian deadlifts. We've got stepping patterns, which I guess in terms of specificity kind of mechanically simulate a lot of what the running stride looks like. We've got lunging based movement patterns such as split squats, forwards lunges, reverse lunges. We've got upper body pulls and pushes, which I guess for a runner are sort of a little bit less important, but probably should be in there somewhere. And then we've got trunk exercises, which are usually trying to sort of stiffen and brace the trunk in different positions, either kind of laterally or trying to prevent rotation and so on. So if runners have got an exercise from each of those categories across their training week, they're not going to go too far wrong in terms of a general prescription.
Excellent. And I guess the only fun one that I was going to end on are the things that if you walk into a house and an endurance runner or a marathon runner lives there, that you would expect to see lying around. I'm thinking if you walked into mine, you'd see a TheraBand tied around the leg of a heavy chair or table somewhere. You'd see a wobble cushion on the floor somewhere, and probably a Swiss ball and a medicine ball knocking around. Are there other giveaways that you would recommend that people just can put at home so they can be reminded, let's say, to use them regularly?
I think you've touched upon most of them there, actually. It's like we were discussing. There's I never want to suggest there's sort of just one way to progress and overload exercises. There's lots of different implements and equipments that we can use, and I think that's really helpful because a lot of them are kind of cheaper than others. Like you don't necessarily need to go and buy. I think going back sort of 20, 30 years, people would buy these sort of like kind of multi-gym resistance machines, which would sort of do every exercise. Whereas now we've got lots of different pieces of kit that we can use to provide overload, as well as just overloading with body weight initially, as we've said. So yeah, I think you've touched upon most there. I think you definitely find a foam roller in.
I was just about to say mine was a foam roller. I've always got a foam roller or a hockey ball. They're the things that.
Yeah.
So I come more of a kind of a massage area than necessarily. I mean, there is TheraBand round a chair leg is a good one though.
Yeah.
Now I've got George trying to pull
Usually
on
with
it
someone sitting on the chair, if it's a light chair.
Oh yes, this is true.
You've got to have the weight there with it.
God, how strong are you? Moving a chair with a.
Well, if you're doing the knee pulling or feet exercise, even with a foot exercise, I would inch the chair along if I was.
Are you like Hulk Paula in disguise? You can move chairs with your foot strength.
It's tied around because I would sit on the floor with my foot hooked into the TheraBand and do a lot of the I don't even know what you call them, Rich. The intrinsic muscles up the front of your shins. kind of so do
Yeah,
straight
the
and then
Alexander
to
Pole,
either
yeah.
side. So it's kind of feet and shins exercises to support ankles. But
Yes,
yeah, they
yeah,
used to be tied around a
absolutely.
lot of places. Last thing you remember when you're packing up in a hotel room is make sure you've gone around and kind of picked up all the therabands that were tied around the hotel bed.
Mine is finding cars that have been scattered around by the
Yeah.
boys. It's like, have we got
Thank
them?
Yeah.
you so much, Rich. Do really, really
Thank you.
appreciate you taking the time. You can get Rich's book, of course. The details will be in the link. And thank you for coming on and advising us on the best way to build up that strength and conditioning, especially with a nod to marathon runners, of course.
No problem at all. And good luck to everyone in their preparation.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, mate. You're a legend. Thank you.
Well, that was my first time meeting Rich. A huge thank you to him for helping us out with some of those little exercises that you can put in. As we've talked about lots of times, little is better than nothing at all, and as much as you can fit in. Obviously, the emphasis is on the running in the build up to the marathon, but whatever you can do in terms of supporting your body around that with strength and conditioning will reap huge dividends in terms of avoiding injury, helping you run more efficiently, particularly as you fatigue towards the end of the marathon. And of course, those big muscles to store that glycogen in to help you or help prevent you from running out of fuel and hitting the wall.
No, absolutely. He's a good lad, is Rich, and it was great having him on. But I think I think for some people, like understanding like the role of what strength and conditioning does, and just helping build that tolerance for that training, because again, we put so much into achieving our goals in running that you can be forgiven to solely focus on that particular exercise as in run to get our goals. But strength and conditioning is such a help, not just for performance, but as he also said, to maintaining us, keeping us injury free, improve efficiency, all these wonderful things that will help us. And I kind of almost, my analogy has always been with strength and conditioning, it's like the glue that holds together the wonderful building you're trying to build of whatever it is. And so I think that mindset around that strength and condition is not a waste of time, and it is a very much a help to what you're trying to do with your running, is a good mentality to use it. But again, being sympathetic to the fact that you don't want to, I think he mentioned it brilliantly, as your S&C, front load it at the start of the program and reduce it so that you're concentrating more on the running towards the marathon.
Yeah, and you're just kind of maintaining. So you're like, it's like, I guess anything, you're kind of loading up to build up that tolerance, and then maintaining as you're building up the length of your long runs, and then just taper down, as he talked about at the end, which is really interesting as well. And it's interesting because I think I mentioned before that Raf picked up a little bit of a niggle, kind of upper hamstring, and I mean, kids respond really, really quickly. So we basically went away over the Christmas break and had him doing a little bit of strengthening every single day with a Swiss ball and some kind of body weight stuff, planks and things like that. And it's amazing how quickly kind of it built up. So now he's been able to drop right back down to a maintenance dose just when you go back to school and you've got less time.
No, absolutely. No,
And what
very,
did you
very
do,
good.
Thommo, when you were at your peak? So when you were training for marathons, how often in there would you be getting in the gym?
Oh, crikey. I think, I mean, I kind of, exactly as Richard said, I front loaded quite a lot. And so, and to be honest, in the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks, I would gauge myself on fatigue.
Yeah.
So I kind of, certainly the weight would come down, and I didn't do a huge amount of explosive exercises. Like you mentioned, did you say cleans? In your when we talking, I never touched anything like that in my, maybe that's where I went wrong, but I didn't do anything like that, which I would do when I was training for 5 and 10, but in the winter. So I kind of kept it very light and frequent as I got closer to a marathon, and heavier and less, or shorter amount of reps before that. But I think it's very important to go off feel when it comes to fatigue, because the last thing you want to do is, because he mentioned technique, and I think technique can be linked to someone new going to a gym, learning technique, but also when you're experienced, linking poor technique to fatigue. So it kind of has a double whammy, and you certainly don't want to be in the gym with poor technique if you're tired. So thinking clearly, which isn't always easy when you've got marathon training in the
No.
brain is a good thing. But you very quickly, before we move on.
Yeah, so very quickly, similar stuff. I would actually keep the weight pretty much the same until I started my taper, in terms of things like squats. But you're right, the explosive stuff, so plyometric jumps and cleans, I would totally expect them to kind of tail off when I was really loading, particularly with a high mileage and with the longest of the long runs. In that build-up stage, I would reduce the injury risk, if you like, of putting in those plyometric things at that point, but they have huge value at other times. Now we are following 3 people on the build up through this road to London. We've heard from Charlotte Davis, we've heard from Sophie Rayworth. Now it's time to catch up with Harry Judd and his training partner Gab and find out how they're getting on in their build up and in fact their workout today. So now we teased the catch up with Harry Judd and Gab Stone, his training partner, and now literally on the fly, do you see what I did with that, guys? We are going to catch up with these two after their training session. Thank you for taking the time. Hopefully the refueling is going on as we speak.
Well, this has become a big part of our life, really, and our post-session tactics. We talk just as much about our refueling as we do the sessions. Gab called me yesterday and was like, right, because our sessions obviously often finish at either our Budgeons or an M&S. And so
there are other supermarkets.
There are,
available. If you're interested in sponsoring the pod.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like, right, let's just talk post-session recovery. Like, are we going sandwich? Are we going straight for the pastries?
Yesterday was the first time we've spoken about the day before.
Yeah, this is true. But honestly, we got into M&S the other day after a 20k session set by yours truly, and
Hello.
And I was literally shaking. I was so hungry. I think I burst through the doors and I was like, "Where are the bags? Where are the bags?"
Of course, the scene and most expensive.
But slightly more controlled today. So after that session, I concluded that I need to maybe be taking some gels on these sessions. Mm-hmm. And today I had a gel halfway through the session, and I finished much stronger and much more.
There you go, expert fueling advice for the
You're
listeners.
welcome. You're welcome.
There you go.
And you started hydrated, of course.
Yeah.
This is not what I want to see. I hear, boys. How was the session today? How did it go? Because I'm actually on tenterhooks to find out. Because you had a bit of a
well, hang on,
session.
Thommo. First, as coach, you actually have to tell us what the session is.
Well, I thought I'd let them talk us through it because then they can
There's a
say
story
because
behind
it sounds
that,
like. Go on.
I was saying there's a story behind that, which is a friend of ours joined us today as well, and both him and Harry had set the session up wrong on their watches. So we reached the point where, because we did a warm up and then we went into sort of like a progressive, sort of 18 minutes in total, wasn't it? And as soon as we hit the end of the first effort, I carried on going and they stopped, thinking that they had a 3-minute rest.
Oh no! Right.
Unfortunately, Gab was right. So basically, we had 8 minutes. 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 4 minutes, progressively getting quicker at a sort of tempo pace, 3 minutes rest, and then that again. So 18 minutes times 3 with 3 minutes rest in between. And as always for me, like the first set is a bit like, oh God, this is a bit rough and I'm not feeling great. And then by the end of the third set, I was absolutely flying, feeling fantastic. So it was a really good session.
Which is exactly why we finished on a 2:55.
No, you didn't.
No, I mean, it was relatively fast towards the end, but honestly, this time it was absolutely nothing to do with me. I was accused throughout the session about being responsible for pushing the pace too fast, but then at the end it was...
well, just to provide a background with the audience as well, because obviously on the weekend you boys had a progressive, a longer run that's like 20k that I kind of gave you guys free rein in the last 20 minutes to pick up the pace above 4:30 per k. Obviously, they're trying to break 3 hours. It's around 4:16 per k. Little did I realise they were going to come back to me, and you can tell them who was the instigator, but they ran a sub 25k at the end of this. And I had pictures of Harry looking a bit sorry for himself from Gab.
Almost
but it sounds like
is what you mean.
so the roles reversed a little bit today. So the paces were within the set were for 8 minutes at 4:20, 6 minutes at 4:10, 4 minutes at 4 minutes. So what kind of paces were you hitting today?
Well, the first set we pretty much stuck to it 4:20, 4:10, 4s. Second set was probably around 4:16 and then 4:05 and then 3:55s. And then the final set was 4:15 and then about 4:03 and then 3:40.
Excellent. Oh, that's really good.
Well,
so now I'm guessing, putting your money where the coach's mouth is not. You two have been in the ice bath and are now just warming up in the car. Is that right?
Not quite.
Rubbing off on him, Thommo. Thommo's got one in a box in his backyard if you need one. It's not actually come out of the box yet,
Gab and I,
which is why we're teasing him.
We do our ice baths in the summer. We're fair weather ice bathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But were you boys pleased? Did you feel? I mean, just for giving the audience a bit more of a context. I mean, obviously today, as I said, is about being a little bit more controlled and pushing that kind of tolerance around marathon race pace. But you ran quicker, so from me as a coach, I take that you felt within yourself, A, recovered from the weekend on the long run, and B, somewhat in control of the paces you were running.
Yeah, I mean, we try and pick apart. Yeah, we try and pick apart the science of it a little bit when we get the session through, and it seems to make sense. Like, you seem to know what you're doing.
Thanks.
It seems to make sense.
It makes him seem that way quite well, doesn't he?
Yeah. I've heard he's got some experience. But when we found that, because on paper, I mean, this is often the concern if anyone's looking to do a session that's set by Chris, that on paper it doesn't look that bad.
Which is worrying.
But this one, it didn't look that bad. It wasn't too bad, but I think it was more getting used to being more comfortable at that slightly faster pace.
And did you get the hidden element in there?
The hidden element?
Yeah, the concentration bit. So he is quite a smart coach, so he knows what he's doing. He's trying to build in a little bit of your concentration in there as well. So you're actually picking up the pace. You have to concentrate. You have to mentally apply yourself like you do in the marathon to stay with it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's your kind of part of the training, isn't just obviously the aerobic stuff and the pushing your heart rates. It's the mental side, the remembering the feeling of how that rhythm feels and trying to control your breathing. Try to be like today. I was thinking quite proud of myself. I was thinking like be economical, like just stay calm, feel relaxed. Because when you're running for 3 hours, 4 hours in a marathon, those small things are going to make a big difference to to the overall outcome. And so I think I'm just starting to understand the term running economy, literally over the past couple of days.
You don't have to understand it. The coach needs to do that bit. You're fine. But if you do, it's a bonus.
Yeah, we did find with the 8 minute block, that was sort of, it's relatively comfortable at 4:20, but you're in a little bit of no man's land with it. So you're sort of running at a pace that you have to keep as opposed to just plodding along, but you're not kicking on. And 8 minutes is just like a bit of an annoyingly long time. But I guess that's the science behind it.
So a little bit of a technical question. What surface did you do it on and what shoes did you wear?
Oh, you're outing
in terms,
us
I don't need the exact make of shoes. I just mean, did you wear a racer type shoe or a?
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, I don't know if you have as much, but I certainly, since getting into running, I haven't quite fallen into the, not trap, but the mode that a lot of runners do is having 5-6 different pairs of shoes. I basically have my everyday running easy shoes and then my carbons, and so I'll generally use my easy shoes for the 4 runs of the week, and then for the 2 sessions I wear my carbons. So I'm wearing the, what are they called again, Gab? New Balance
Elite.
New Balance Elites, and they're the latest ones, and for me the most comfortable New Balance carbons I've used. And yeah, I don't have like a tempo shoe or any other rotation. I just find that works for me. So
yeah, it's the same with me. We run, in terms of surface, we were in Regent's Park today, which for us is mountainous compared to the flat road of Chiswick. But we stick to sort of flat concrete as much as we can. I'm the same. 4 runs a week I do in stable shoes. I'm a big overpronator, so in as stable shoes as I can, which are the Asics Gel Kayanos. And then for the overpronators, if you want to wear carbon shoes, it's always a bit more difficult because there aren't any stability carbon shoes. So I'm constantly searching YouTube and Instagram trying to find out what the latest, best, most stable, non-stable carbon shoes are. But I only really started to wear carbons last year, and the difference is incredible, especially when you're starting to pick the pace up in those sessions.
Yeah, no, I think it might be worth checking out because you can. I know we talked about this a lot around my mess ups in Tokyo and then in Boston. But you can put insoles. You just need them slightly modified for use. But a good insole maker will adapt them to the carbons, so that should help you with the pronation bit.
Yeah, definitely. I have found that it did surprise me how okay I've been, to be honest, with the carbons. There are some of them that are really very rocky and they just wouldn't work. But I think if you look out for the most stable ones you can find, then you're okay, because obviously you're not wearing them every day of the week as well.
Yeah, you've run many marathons and you got a good experience in the background. But in terms of how you feel different at this stage, just in terms of where you're at and just generally in terms of going into this, how because obviously when I kind of touched upon you in your last build up for London, you kind of you were still kind of building up, but you're a bit further ahead of the game this time. So just for the audience, how you kind of where your mindset's sitting right now with things at this, because we're still 12 weeks out or just over.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a direct comparison to what our stats were this time last year when we did it on our Stravas, and we were scoffing at our 2005 selves, going, oh my god, look how poor our weekly mileage is, you know. So I mean, Gab's really kicked things up. I was away on tour back in October, November, had an injury, so I was off running. Meanwhile, Gab really stepped things up. He's up to like 90k a week. I've built back up slowly. I'm up to about 70 to 80k a week, whereas this time last year we were around 50, 60. So that's quite a big difference. I think also another year of training banked. Obviously London last year we had a relatively good block, particularly with you on board at the end, Chris, but you know, as a lot of people, we were massively affected by the weather, some more than others. We won't talk about times, but they're available to look up if you want to check them.
I wouldn't advise it.
But yeah, also I was thinking this time, February last year, I did a 10k PB, so I'm quite tempted to try a 10k effort in February to see, to compare where I'm at this year versus next year. But I would predict I'm feeling much stronger. Gab's recently.
Yeah, we'll talk about times now.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Well,
in terms of the
Gab's smashed some PBs recently, so I'm looking forward to doing some attempts myself. But yeah, I'm loving it. I'm excited, and I mean, as you can tell, we would struggle to get through this without each other. We live very close. You know, we're good mates and we're running partner. And honestly, I highly recommend finding a running partner because it makes it so much more.
Have you listened to the pod then?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So, I was going to say, as we're talking about this, forget the sessions. The hard ones are the 14k easy on your own, 12k easy when it's raining in the winter. You know, that's where, I give serious respect to the people going on this journey. It's the hard, slow recovery runs that, you know, I much prefer the sessions because you've got a focus, you've got a, you know, it's scary, it's exciting, it's dopamine, it's adrenaline, it's all those things, whereas it's the ploddy kind of, you know, work that you do during the week that's hard. And so
especially when you're doing the same routes as well, and around this time of year when it's neither, especially at the moment, it's not freezing cold and it's not warm, it's just kind of grey.
yeah
and that's the point of getting in. But I think overall we're probably feeling more confident than we did last year. There's a plan in place, which is always good, and we feel more adept at hitting those sorts of paces. I always said, when it feels like when you head towards the sub 3 attempt mark, it feels like more of a run than a jog, more of a race than a run. It just is that point at which it's like, okay, that's a sustained pace for quite a long time, isn't it? But I think the more time you spend on feet, then the more confidence you get.
Brilliant. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Thanks
much.
for letting us follow you and tag along. And thanks very much for squeezing this in at the end of the run. I know you need to get on with recovery, getting home, getting in that ice bath. So thanks again. And we look forward to catching up with you
Well,
next time.
it's always a good time to catch up with us post session because you're feeling good, you're feeling happy,
Yeah,
Yeah.
dopamine's
yeah.
flying.
Pastries flying.
Yeah, don't speak to me on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. when I'm on my way into work, knowing I've
No.
got to do a 12k easy.
Don't worry, we won't.
Do you know what? It's funny. Like one of the things that a coach looks out for is that first word or that first sentence from the athlete to gauge how happy they are. And I sensed a good mood, so I thought it must be a good session. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
you
vibing.
always gauge it, don't you? But lads, well done.
Excellent.
Seriously, well done. That's
Thank you
really
so
that's a
much.
good bit of work in the back. In the back.
Yeah,
in the bag.
nice one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the bank. Yeah, definitely.
Bank or
Right.
bag?
Thank you.
Both.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
That was great to hear from Harry and Gab and see how their training is progressing. Now it's time quickly for the 1 minute challenge. Thommo, what have you got this week?
1 minute challenge. I love it. I love the fact we kept to a time
That was
scale.
good
Right.
last week.
No, it was. Right, Paula. In 1 minute, strength and conditioning challenge for you. How has your view of strength and conditioning changed since you ran your first marathon? Go.
Wow. My first marathon was when I was 28. I'm now 52. It's definitely changed in terms of, I think I saw the benefit probably a little bit quicker. Then I lifted certainly heavier, and had more time to program it in. I went through young kids and actually they were used as part of the strength and conditioning. I'm sure you know about this now, Thommo, with doing planks and sit-ups, holding a child. It is a great fun way to distract them and make them feel a part of it. And sometimes they're better at the planks and things than we actually are. But if they're sitting on your back, it makes your plank a little bit harder too. And then now as I'm moving, what do I call it, into the older, I call it my second half. I'm in my second half. I need to work a lot more on the flexibility, on more regular stretching, more TheraBand stuff, more working with my body and really making sure that I concentrate on the other S and C, which is sleep and chow. So make sure that you sleep really well and you feed yourself really well as well. Bing!
I tell you what, Paula, you're good at this. Sticking to a minute. I've got to give it to you.
It does help we have a clock in the top corner.
No, I know, but I was looking forward to be going to go, stop, cut you off at like mid-sentence. But no, you're like a pro. It's like you've been doing this kind
It's a
of
game.
media
I like
stuff for a
making
long
games
time.
out of stuff.
There you go. No, that's very good, and it was a good answer as well. Well done. I'm impressed. Maybe we should make the whole podcast just me giving you a minute to answer, and I just
Minute
stay
challenge.
out of it.
Then we
There's-
might stick to the running order better.
Well, I would never stick to a minute. That's the problem. So I'd need like 4 minutes. But anyway,
Right, that's my 1 minute challenge nailed. Training, Thommo, week 4. What should people be looking at, making sure they've got in? We've kind of got that planning it out within the week, haven't we? When's the best place for you to fit those certain runs in? And now kind of getting into a bit more of the bread and butter of the marathon training.
yeah, I think the big thing now is that hopefully people have sort of implemented the seeds in their training program, whether, in the gym with the running, and it's now a case of building those foundations or seeds up into bigger plants or what have you, or bigger roots. So I think we're now at that kind of stage where you don't want to be sort of adding too many new things, but you certainly start to want to expand on what you're already doing and start building out that kind of marathon tolerance, I guess, is the better way. But we're 12 weeks out, so I think this is very much kind of switching into I am training for a marathon now, where rather than before the last 4 weeks, it was much more about not thinking about that long-term target and laying down the habits and the foundations towards what's going to get me ready to start it, would be my
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good time to start thinking about perhaps investing in a couple of pairs of shoes so you can rotate trainers. We've talked about, you're obviously going to have your racing shoe that we're going to talk about trying out and finding the one that works for you as you move nearer. But perhaps having a shoe that you can do slightly quicker things in, your tempo runs, and then a recovery shoe, which I would actually advise, I don't know what you think about this, Thommo, but not having a plate in that one. So you are kind of keeping up the foot strength, and also a good time an app that we've had Rich on today talking about it, to start thinking about those little exercises and stretches that you can build in. So it isn't just getting out the door, getting the training in and making sure you're refueling as soon as you come in the door. It's also kind of working in time to stretch those overworked muscles and to get them kind of supporting your running.
I think that's a really good point to kind of finish on, that we're now entering a phase where fatigue is going to become an issue, and we don't want to sort of artificially change things to perception, so that perceptually we think we're doing better than we are, just to build our confidence. I think we need to, so therefore using shoes that may not assist us, like you've just mentioned, in a session, so that we're not running as quick as we want, but in reality, this is where we're going to be tired, we're going to have a good days, bad days, and it's all part of the bigger picture to where we're trying to get to. So kind of, it's not about feeling great every session. It's not about feeling on top. It's just about not digging a hole. And sometimes running in a less supported shoe is a good thing for the conditioning and for the longevity of the program. And it's not always about kind of smashing sessions out the park. And I think sort of getting the head around that as a thing, I think is a really handy tool to have, so that in 6-7 weeks you see it as a one big block, rather than this everything hinges on this one particular day.
Yeah, and start thinking about foam roller, stretch rope, something just to kind of make you, because none of us runners are good at stretching or particularly like putting it into the day, but it does help after your run just to stretch out those muscles, does help make sure that you'll enjoy the first bit of your next run a little bit more.
Do you know, it's funny, I had a friend when I was growing up, he used to say to me in his warm-up, if he could touch his toes with straight legs, straight legs, not bent legs, but if he could touch his toes, he would go, yep, I'm going to have a good day. And it was like, whether he did or didn't, it didn't matter if he could touch his toes, because again, it was something, we just don't, like you say, we don't stretch as much as we probably should do. So every now and again, I would kind of see if I can touch my toes, and I'm like, it would just hold me accountable. Thommo, you've not done enough stretching. But
and not everyone can. We should mention that. I mean, my son is nowhere near being able to touch his toes with a straight leg. He's grown so much in the last year or so. So it might be something that is relative to you, but you're right. Know your kind of maximum stretch point and try and stay close to that as we build up the volume and the intensity through this build up. So you've kind of got a baseline, and you don't want to stray too far from that, because that is another injury risk. And it can be a bit of fun also, trying to put in a little bit of stretching, at least during the warm afterwards. I hope everyone has survived all of the snowy weather. It's starting to warm up here. Is it warming up with you, Thommo?
It is, but I think we're getting a cold snap coming in. But I think, again, I think we should maintain our enthusiasm and excitement for what's coming, but at the same time, not get over. I think Hugh said it best, and it's not like I forget how he words it exactly, but don't let that excitement turn into pushing too hard too soon. But definitely keep enjoying, smiling what you're doing, and it's not about being. You've still got a lot of time to go, so lots of time to fix things that might not be right, and lots of time to get fit if it don't feel right now. So, yes. Keeping that relaxed mindset is a good thing.
Now, before we go any further, I want to say a huge thank you to our friends at Wild Nutrition for sponsoring today's episode. They've been a great partner for the Run Club so far, and they're still offering our listeners that 50% off for 3 months subscription.
Yeah, it's been a really good series, hasn't it? And it's flying by very quickly. But this week we're looking at the food-grown menopause complex, which you know something about, Paula.
It's a very important topic that brings with it a myriad of interesting symptoms and hormonal and metabolic shifts. It means the nutritional support is more important than ever. And what I really love is that this is a holistic 360 formulation designed by women for women. It's got magnesium for your energy, muscles and bones, vitamin B6 to help regulate that hormonal activity, and it's so key for staying active and feeling empowered throughout this chapter of life.
And it also includes lupronol, hop extract too, doesn't it? Which is clinically studied for emotional and balance and relaxation. So it's kind of covering all bases in that respect.
Exactly, and I didn't know that about the hops extract, so that's really interesting. It all comes back to their belief that our bodies are wired to recognise nutrients from food. So all of Wild Nutrition's nutrition uses food-grown ingredients that is as close to their original food form as possible to maximise that absorption that you can trust and make sure you feel the energy quickly.
So to repeat, that is Wild Nutrition are giving Paula's Run Club listeners an exclusive 50% off for 3 months and a free personal consultation with a nutritional therapist. Just go to wildnutrition.com/Paula to get started.
That is wildnutrition.com/Paula, so you can feel the difference yourselves quickly. Start 2026 rooted in wellness. Normal terms and conditions apply. So that was a jam-packed episode for everyone this week. Thank you so much for listening to us. Please do not forget to keep those questions coming in. For Shakeout goes out every Thursday. +44 7564 747 914 is the WhatsApp number. You can, of course, email into Paula's Run Club at momentumbroadcast.co.uk or get in touch on socials as well at Paula's Run Club for all of those. This has been a Momentum Broadcast production. Our main pod drops, of course, every Monday and the Shakeout on the Thursday. Thank you for joining us and happy training this week.
See you soon.